We've demonized Putin, and we Putinized Russia, so we've demonized Russia. Russophobia is running amok in this country. I've seen these things from the inside. I rethought how we got to the edge of war with Russia, where we haven't been since Cuba in 1962, and I have concluded it is 95% our own doing.
Speaking of percentages, would you see that percentage of war breaking out between the US and Russia as getting smaller with Donald Trump in office?
Trump is wrong on a lot of things, but on the thing that I care most about, because I think it's existential, because I think it's life and death, if he means what he said, he was right. It would be great to cooperate with Russia. I would go farther. It's imperative.
So how's he doing so far?
Well, we don't know yet. We will have to see, but the attack on him is ferocious. President of the United States is being kept from doing what we've demanded of every president: keep us out of war with Russia. We've crippled Trump. Now, on the other hand, Trump doesn't cripple easily. He just presses on, rightly or wrongly. So I hope that he and Putin reach a series of agreements that will keep us safe.
The tremendous hostility in the establishment to this meeting at Helsinki is largely driven by the fact that people want to undermine Trump. But furthermore, they have to explain how he got elected in the first place. It can't be because Hillary Clinton or the Democrats didn't run a good campaign. It can't be because the American people are that foolish. It has to be because they were tricked.
Opponents of Donald Trump are using Putin as kind of a patsy or a fall guy to attack him.
Yes, as a hammer to beat him over the head.
That these people would prefer trying to impeach Trump to averting nuclear war or war with Russia. If it's come to that, Trump's no longer to blame. We are ourselves.
It's great to be with you.
Hiya. So you mentioned that the crisis was kind of in the background for quite a long time, but the reason it basically bubbled back up is because the US and UK and so on started sending arms to the Ukraine. What actually caused this change of policy from kind of the Western side to send these arms to the Ukraine all of a sudden?
First point to make is it's important to understand that it started under Trump, right? And you want to remember that if Donald Trump had gotten his way, we wouldn't have this crisis today. Donald Trump wanted to do away with NATO, so there'd be no NATO. Donald Trump wanted to jump into bed with Vladimir Putin. He liked Vladimir Putin, so the relations between the United States and the Russians would be much better today. And Donald Trump also wanted to pivot to Asia. Donald Trump was the first president to recognize that China was a peer competitor. But anyway, he didn't get his way with Russia. And in fact, what he did, this is Trump, what he did with Russia is he started arming the Ukrainians to the chagrin of the Russians. So your question, which is an excellent one, is why do we do this? I think there are two reasons. First of all, the Russophobia in the West, especially the United States, is just off the charts. It's truly remarkable how much Russophobia there is in the United States. The hostility to Putin, it's really mind-boggling. My good friend Steve Cohen, who's now dead, who is a very prominent Sovietologist in his day, an expert on Russia after the Soviet Union collapsed. Steve was on the left politically, and he argued that it was much easier during the Cold War to make arguments that were sympathetic to the Soviet Union than it is to make arguments that are sympathetic to Russia in the contemporary political environment. It's a really remarkable statement. And people like Steve, and this is true of me, making the sorts of arguments you've listened to today, and hopefully many of you have seen with my video on YouTube, right? We're accused of being Russian dupes, tools of Moscow, unpatriotic, and so forth and so on. It's really quite remarkable. So you have acute Russophobia. And in a world where you have acute Russophobia, taking a stick and poking the Russians in the eye is perfectly legitimate. In fact, it's a good thing. And by the way, this cuts across political lines. So the Russophobia is as pronounced in the Republican Party as it is in the Democratic Party. So that's the first reason. The second reason is the Russians didn't play hardball for a long time. They swallowed the first NATO expansion. They swallowed the second NATO expansion. And even after the Ukraine crisis in February 2014, yes, they took Crimea. Yes, they helped support the Russian speakers and the Russians in the Donbass, but they didn't get really rough with the United States. So the Americans have this powerful sense of Russophobia.
Is this what you are, soldier? Some useless ghoul? The local madman? I'm not a soldier. You're gonna end up in a cell! Old, worthless, discarded! There's no mission. And while you rock and drool, the world will burn to ashes! You are not real! You are not real! You're still talking to me, soldier! There's no mission! I'm not a soldier!
John? Hey, John, it's okay.
And they have a powerful sense that the Russians are weak and that we can just push them around. We can poke them in the eye and they're not going to do anything. And this is why I said, David, in my formal comments, that the Russians have had enough. Lavrov has said explicitly, we reached our boiling point. And the Russians have made it clear they are not screwing around. They are deadly serious. And I think we've gotten the message. And I think we will be much more careful when we deal with them in the future than we have been in the past.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. God bless you all, and may God defend our freedom. And may...
David, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, thank you very much. If I can just follow this up. So why, I'm not sure if this is completely related to this, but why do you think where this Russian phobia kind of came from? Like, how did it develop? And why is it even now more pronounced than in the Cold War, as you said?
I'm not exactly sure. It's a subject I've thought about getting a bunch of people together to talk about and just talk it through. I mean, I'd be curious what, you folks have to say about this. I mean, it has to do, I think, in part with the fact that the Soviet Union was our mortal enemy during the Cold War. Russia is the key remnant state left over from the Soviet Union. So I think there is a lot of leftover resentment or anger towards Russia that stems from the Cold War. I think the fact that Putin stands up to the United States, that Putin is not a pushover, angers the United States. I think that the fact that Putin heads an authoritarian state and that his position on certain social issues like homosexuality drive lots of people in the West crazy. I think that matters too. How much, I'm not sure. I think as far as the Democrats are concerned, as you know, in 2016, Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. It seemed almost unthinkable before the election that she would lose, but she did lose. And the Democrats invented this story that it was not Hillary's fault. It was the Russians who threw the election for Donald Trump, that there was this tight-knit connection between Trump and the Russians manipulated the American political system so that Hillary lost and Trump was in the White House. I think that caused many Democrats who believed that story, because they couldn't possibly believe that Hillary lost because she was a terrible candidate, and that Trump was, in many ways, a very clever politician, right? And he barely won, but he won, and there had to be some reason for that. It was the Russians. I think that really contributed to the Russophobia in the Democratic Party. But those would be some reasons. But you want to take everything I said with a grain of salt, because again, I haven't thought this one through, and I don't have, a really sort of clear answer in my head. But it is a fascinating question.
You're right.
Great.
To the day that I drop, you'll never say that I'm not killing them.
С нами Бог. Remember, no Russian.